topics, I thought this might be something that there's some sharing here, and I'm sure some of it will ring familiar, and maybe we've tried a few things that you haven't had a chance to try yet. So I hope that there's value in this session for you today. All right. So in this session, we'll look at the opportunities and challenges for a program, looking at legal requirements, who wants it, who needs it, the content, communication, evaluation, and sustaining over time. And then I'm going to be as honest as I can be. There's always that little bit of, we don't air all of our laundry sometimes as organizations out to others. But I'm going to try and be as honest as I can about what we have learned along the way here at AHS. And sorry, can you hear me? I'll move my microphone just a bit closer. Is that a little bit better? Hopefully for volume. All right. So I've got a quick poll question, and we're going to make it easy. If in the chat box, if you can type in a number and tell me where you are at with regard to manual materials handling. So 1, no direct involvement, you're just here out of interest. 2, you're involved or about to start a program. Or 3, been there, done that. We just want to compare notes a little bit. So you can type those in. I'll kind of watch it as it scrolls. All right, we've got a little bit of everybody on the call. Okay. Oh, there's some veterans, been there, done that, number 3s with me. Excellent. Sometimes I think there should be a support group on the harder days for big programs. Excellent. Thank you for that. All right, so our context is in 2008, Alberta Health Services was formed from 12 different separate healthcare regions and entities. It was a big bang theory of how to organize healthcare. I know this, pardon me, structure is being looked at in other parts of Canada as well. The world is watching to see how we do. We're coming along. There's certainly been growing pains along the way. We started with about 100,000 workers out of that merger, and we estimate about 30,000 of those workers regularly perform manual materials handling. Food services alone is about 5,000 staff across the province. So the scale is quite significant to try and figure out how do we do that. Now, the nice thing with the merger is it brought with it a whole bunch of historical legacy programs from the different 12 regions and entities. So we could kind of pull those apart and find out what was working and what wasn't when we started to look at building one program to bring it all together. We also, for context, we had the patient handling program. We call it It's Your Move here. And it had grant supported resourcing for staff, equipment, training. There's a huge, huge commitment of dollars and resources near the start of the life of AHS. And at first, when we were told several years after the It's Your Move program was starting to roll, okay, well, we really need to deal with the rest of our staff who handle materials and not patients. At first, we felt a little hard done by because they weren't going to give us any money. We were told just figure out something that will embed within operations and that it would have to be owned and belong to all of those departments right from day one. So at first we felt hard done by that. And then we realized there's some great upsides to not having upfront grant financing because the problem with grants is they come to an end. So as we were building the manual materials handling program, It's Your Move was starting to get ready for the fact that their grant funding was ending. And so where departments had got very comfortable that things were being paid for them, they now had to suddenly take on this commitment of patient handling into their operational functions and budgets and so on. And so it was, people were a little upset. They were like, well, where's our money? We like that. Whereas we could be honest right from day one. It's like, you know what? We don't have money. We're going to have to figure this out as a team together and figure out how to resource and support it. So pros and cons, I guess, to that experience. In the end, I think it's worked out well that we didn't have the grant funding and we had to get the departments to own it right up front. Also very important to understand the drivers for the program. Where is it starting from? Why are we being asked for it? I consider this program to be one of my children because I built it between child one and child two, and so of a human child. And this program was this passionate effort between two maternity leaves for me to get something up and designed. So I literally, my first day back from mat leave, was told, okay, figure this program out. And I really need to understand where that was coming from. It helps me to know where my allies are, where are the people that are going to help support me. And it's also, I think, equally, if not almost more important, to know who's not for the program. Where is the resistance? Is it financial? Is it time? Is it just even concept? Like, how do we handle that? Um, so getting a grip of that and then gathering that information, as mentioned, we had 12 different historical regions and entities, so we could grab all of their legacy programs, all their historic stuff. Now, what was interesting was probably less than half of those regions and entities actually had something even resembling a decent manual materials handling program, and a lot of areas had nothing. And so we had a lot of ground to cover from the different areas. Comparable programs is another one. So we had the patient handling program that we could look at. It had already been out there and going for a couple of years when we started to think about this one. So we could go, what's working for them, what's working for them. So some of their very hard lessons that they had learned softened the efforts for us a little bit up front, because we could go, okay, well, that didn't work for them. We're in the same organization, basically trying to accomplish the same goals. Let's do what's working well and avoid what's not working well for them. Looking to other organizations as well for their manual handling programs. Before coming to this organization, I had worked in England in healthcare there and had been trained through the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents. So I could kind of draw on that knowledge, plus just reaching out to other organizations I maybe had no knowledge of, but see how they were doing. There's always a good old literature review. Always pull some of that. And then credible websites. Well, always watching for that fake news scenario that happens, but looking at credible websites as to where we could start. Um, we really came from a place of trying to achieve legislated compliance. When we looked at our Occupational Health and Safety Code in Alberta, Part 14 speaks to lifting and handling loads, and Part 2 speaks to hazard assessment, elimination, and control. Now, I know there's people from coast to coast on this call, so I won't go extensively into what Alberta legislation looks like, but generally there is some provincial legislation that's going to guide these programs. So for those of you that are starting out and are more in that number two category of trying to figure this out, really make sure you know what your legislation looks like, because that can make a good backbone that you're going to, or foundation that you're going to start as far as what do we need to cover in this program. We also adopted Z1000 for our overall safety management system. We didn't want any of our programs, any of our ergonomics programs, including manual handling, to seem like one-offs or separate pieces of an overall safe, healthy work environment. So we wanted to look at, okay, how are their hazard assessments being done? How are their worksite inspections being done? And how can we use some of the same language so that we're blending in and it's part of a continuing conversation rather than something completely separate. So that was, we started from this place of wanting to achieve that legislated requirement for manual material handling. We didn't want to end there, but we wanted to start there. Now this slide, I know the font's a little bit small on the headers here, but this is what I call the who wants it and who needs it. And very important to recognize that who wants it and who needs it are not always the same people. And so we need to have different conversations. So the ones that want it, they're concerned about their workers or their work areas or their disabling injury rate, however the case may be. But then there's others that this might be a blind spot for them and they don't even realize that this is going to be important. Some of our regions that came into AHS didn't have anything like this and maybe didn't identify a need for it. And that's why they didn't have it. So we had some very different conversations to have along the way. Um, Some of you may have done or attended the change management webinar that myself and Annika did last month. Change management is huge for everything that we do, it seems, and manual material handling programs are no different. And so it comes down to those motivators for what people are looking for. At the senior leadership level, the conversation often goes more around legislated compliance, costs, WCB indicators. When we go down a notch into our leaders, more frontline managers and supervisors, they're looking at staff retention. They're looking at sick time, lost time, and service delivery and patient care. Then frontline workers, they're looking to provide the best patient care that they can as part of a healthcare work environment, but they're looking after their own health and well-being and those of their colleagues. And then workplace health and safety, well, we just get excited about everything to do with health and safety. That said, how many other things are on workplace health and safety's mandate? When we're in healthcare, we're looking at communicable diseases, we're looking at patient handling, manual handling. So there's a lot of context and conversations that need to be done. And so one of our confessed learnings that I'll share here is that initially we really didn't secure the support we needed at the senior leadership level. We got some higher leaders, but I don't think we really cracked that senior leadership level as far as getting the top-down sponsorship of the program to say, this is an expected part of our work, an expected part of our performance, and accountability of our leaders to make sure that their frontline workers are provided access and time to the training program. So that we could have done better. And hopefully, lesson learned, and we'll pick up on that better in the next time. And as we are looking at sustainability, we're having those sometimes difficult conversations at those upper levels to go, okay, what do we need to do? The nice thing with AHS now that we didn't have in the early days is we now have one cohesive software platform for all of our incident reporting. So we are able to run much more powerful reports as far as where the injuries are happening, what types of injuries they are. And so those are good leverage points with senior leaders that we can point to things and say, you know what, manual materials handling is our second highest risk activity for rates of injury in the organization. That gets their attention, and that hopefully gets their support behind the program. And getting to know your audience. Healthcare is a beautifully diverse workforce with so many different jobs within it. And knowing who they are and how to reach them is critical. So speaking of which, I've put in a few photos. I'm going to scroll through fairly quickly, but for those of you that may not be as familiar with the healthcare environment as some of us others that have been working in healthcare much of the time, we think about patients and patient care, and obviously that is the front-facing part of healthcare. But our back of house is significant. Like I said, estimated 30,000 workers that are moving stuff, not patients. So in linen, we have just massive scales of laundry, and some laundry services we outsource and some are in-house. So this is one of our in-house laundry areas. And you can see we do have different types of equipment we're using and loading and unloading, lots of frequency happening in these areas. And I had the opportunity to go to, gosh, I have it somewhere in my notes, 29 different departments across a dozen sites to get a handle of who this program is for. Environmental services are our cleaning services. We've got everything from low down to toilets and floor cleaning to high level dusting. And we do see different patterns of injuries amongst these folks. We see a lot more shoulder injuries proportionately than in some of our other staff areas. And you can see in these photos why that may be the case. Another interesting thing that happened with environmental services was we ended up with kind of a spin-off initiative. When I observed them across different sites, I noticed how different their floor cleaning equipment was. In some areas, they were using heavy traditional string mops. In other areas, they were using lightweight microfiber mop, almost like Swiffer type systems. And I was new to this. This was a new environment to me. And so in chatting with the staff, they shared with me why they liked their equipment, why they didn't like their equipment, and the importance of a good implementation program as well, because there was one site that was given the microfiber mop products, but the implementation and training had been very, very weak. So they actually rejected the product even though it was provided. Whereas another area where it was well implemented, they absolutely loved it. So we thought this is interesting. So we took that as a separate piece, separate from program development, and looked at the physical demands of mopping and the equipment options that were available and the incident statistic differences between sites that had microfiber versus those that had traditional string mops. And that work ended up informing significant, like millions of dollars of purchasing decisions to gradually convert AHS sites all over to microfiber mop products. So that was quite a satisfying win. And that would be something else on the side, I would say, as far as personal satisfaction goes. If you are doing these long running program development things, it can sometimes you don't get the satisfaction of the impact of your work. And so, having these more quick win satisfaction moments while you're in the process of doing the long win, long win opportunities is very important. At least that's my personal experience. Other department is our CPSM, Contracts, Procurement, and Supply Management. These are the folks that bring all the stuff into our site. So you can see this is a kind of a panoramic shot of one of our store areas. This was actually one of our smaller sites. The basic good old handling of boxes. So it does happen, but I was very quickly learning that manual materials handling training program was going to be about so much more than handling boxes and using dollies and looking at some of our unique loads that we handle, such as compressed gases and cylinders that require different kinds of carts to secure them while they're being transported and so on. Medical device reprocessing. This is where we sterilize the instruments that are used for invasive patient procedures. This is a small site here, so their collection was more outpatient clinic types of things. So they actually had Rubbermaid totes to collect things. So while not as heavy and busy as our large sites with big, multiple operating rooms, there is still opportunity for learning here as far as looking at our posture and the bending. There's some really neat equipment options where the cart at the bottom, the dolly part, is perfectly matched and level with what essentially is a high level dishwasher. And so you can load the rack and then you just slide the rack from the dolly over into the washer, and it works that way on the other side too. So some really neat equipment options that are there. And then there's very fine and fiddly handling as well, where we're looking at very small dexterity. The individual at the bottom is putting together like an individual kit that's going to go to a clinic. So there might be one scalpel and one scissors and, very, very small items that they're sorting. And then we've got our facilities maintenance and engineering. It's no small feat to run our buildings, and the amount of different equipment and the different range of calls that they get asked for, and the awkward postures they may experience, such as these two I was watching getting up into the ceiling and doing some work there. And of course, food services. People always joke about hospital food, but it is quite a significant production. So from the loading dock to delivering and retrieving meals throughout our hospitals, so a lot of cart pushing and pulling, and then just washing the large volume of dishes that are coming back from 3 meals a day. All right. I'm hoping, Patricia, that you can troubleshoot. I'm not sure. Is everyone having a problem with my slides? All right. There should be a slide up that says build the program. Crossing fingers. We are always vulnerable to technology. All right. Okay, let's hope it's a log off, log on circumstance here. All right. So actually building the program, we are all about being evidence-based content. to build the program, and we had an advisory group. So we had a multidiscipline advisory group from the key stakeholders. So all those different groups that I just showed you on the slides, we had membership from those groups, from workplace health and safety. We would touch base in with the It's Your Move program too and see how things are going, and continue to learn from their experience in developing and delivering this program. Um, and regular newsletters were circulated for every contact on the project to date. And when I say every contact, I literally mean every contact. Every worker that I met, their supervisor, across all those 29 departments and multiple sites, every leader that I talked to about this program, their name got added to my distribution list. And so I would do basically just a quick little one-page newsletter, approximately monthly, depending on what we had to share, to let them know the program's still underway. Because this program took a year to develop, and then it took another 6 to 10 months to pilot and test and refine. And then we started to actually roll it out. And so for those workers that I met in the early days of the project and said, okay, I'm here to learn this and I want to learn from you and we want to develop a program that's going to work for you. If I were to disappear and then not ever provide an update, chances are they'd be like, I don't know, some lady was here once, but I don't know what's happening with that program. They must have just forgotten about it. And I didn't want to leave that feeling for anybody. So that was an initiative that I took. And it was really great to maintain that communication. And we did that basically through to the pilot stage. And then once we started to deliver, then the messaging was just going out to the whole organization. It also gave me people that I could go back to if I needed to fact check a few things as well. And this was a big deal too. We had to come up with a name and a look for the program. So this became the Move Safe Manual Materials Handling Program. What's very satisfying to me now, talking to you, is that the Move Safe name is becoming a recognized brand in our organization. So people almost use it like a verb. It's like, have you done your move safe? So that's exciting when it starts to become part of the conversation and is that embedded piece. All right, so testing the program. Our initial thought was to test it with a provincial department. So Nutrition and Food Services, they are organized basically with a director and leadership at the top that guides food services across the entire organization. Other parts of AHS are organized in zones. So we have North Zone, Edmonton Zone, Central Zone, which includes Red Deer, Calgary Zone, and then South Zone, which is Lethbridge and Medicine Hat and associated small communities in that area. And so we thought, well, wouldn't it be great to pilot it with a provincial program because then we can kind of test it in all the different geographies. However, we changed our mind on that because as we were meeting with the food services department, who were willing partners in this work, they were very, very committed to this work. They said, well, in our small sites, we probably only have, maybe 4 food service workers, but then there's 2 maintenance workers and there's 1 person for the medical device reprocessing. And how much sense would it make to have a champion and the training going to just those 4 food service staff and not to that small collection of other staff on that same site. So we thought, okay, let's not pursue that. Let's look at more at a site-based model. So that way we could test the program on a site and we could put it at one of those small sites and have a champion that would offer sessions that food service and environmental service and maintenance and all those other groups could attend and kind of break down the silos between those groups a little bit. So that's what we ended up doing. We selected 12 sites to pilot and test the program content. We did make some small changes to the program as a result of the pilot to get it ready for that broader implementation. Here's one of the learning moments. So we had a handover at this point of the project to a new team member. Because this is when I went and had my second baby. And so I went on maternity leave, and we had to recruit someone to join our team and jump into this program. And he did a wonderful job, and he did run it through its pilot and so on. But there's a couple little things that do happen, and we've all been in that situation where we've had to hand over work, and they don't have all the history. So my colleague, he hadn't been on all of these sites. He hadn't had the conversations with all of these folks. He kind of was receiving the program in the state I had got it to, but not how it had gotten there necessarily. And you try to share some of it, but you can never do that full, brain transplant of knowledge over. And so just one sort of funny little bit was when I had got out there and I saw these workers, they really don't have much care about anatomy and physiology. Those of us with kinesiology, physio, OT type backgrounds, sometimes we're at fault at getting a little excited about that and thinking everybody is going to be excited about that. Ultimately, our frontline staff wanted to know how to stay safe so that they could go home and just live their lives, right? And do all of their regular activities. Knowing exactly all the details of spine anatomy and so on, they didn't need it in detail. They needed to understand the principles as to why the stuff was important, but they didn't need to know a lot. So when I designed the pilot program, I didn't put much in. My colleague took over the program, then loaded it with a bunch of anatomy, and then he loaded it right before he piloted it, and then piloted through the pilot. The feedback came back, so that actually you can cut a lot of that. So those are some of the funny little things that can happen. Delivery options. So when we started to roll, we started with the train the trainer model. So someone from our ergonomics team, and just for context, we have over 100,000 staff in this organization. I'm one of 4 on our ergonomics team, and that includes our manager. So we have 2 ergonomics advisors, we have me as senior ergonomist, and then our team lead. So we started off with this model where we did a lot of teaching, and we went out and we taught champions, and then the champions were taught taught the frontline workers what they needed to know in their job. We did phased implementation from 2011 to 2015 doing this. And in that time frame, we did okay. We got 725 champions trained, and they in turn trained about 5,000 frontline workers. So not bad, but again, we were aiming for 30,000 workers that need this information, and we over 4 years got to 5,000 of them. So we had a lot more ground to cover. This was the time that MoveSafe was becoming known as a brand, but it was so resource intensive to deliver that we needed to look at things differently. We're like, okay, we don't have enough boots on the ground in this model to get out there. So ultimately, change is the guarantee in anything we do. And if we don't change, then we're going to get very frustrated. So recognizing that we were getting some movement forward, we were getting some buy-in to the program, we just weren't getting it far enough, fast enough. We did that review and evaluation, go, okay, so what else can we do? So we looked at those positives, we looked at the challenges, and then explored what other options could we change. And ways that we did evaluation included focus groups, just open discussions with workplace health and safety and MoveSafe stakeholders, review of training numbers and feedback forms. I can't remember, we may have done surveys. We often get low return on surveys, especially with this group. There's not great computer access with this group at times, at least not email. So yeah, we generally have to get in front of these folks where we can. And let's see what else. Just scanning my notes. Oh yes, here's a big learning moment I'll share: attendance tracking. So at this point, all attendance tracking was manual, and especially for champions that would deliver training to frontline workers, they would have a nice little attendance sheet and they'd pass it around and everyone would sign. And we did ask for some firm identifiers such as a staff ID number. However, a lot of staff do not know their ID number offhand, and so it would be left blank. We also have a very diverse workforce with a wide variety of names and spellings of names, and some individuals that have taken on nicknames as their regular name as well. And so the sign-in sheets had any combination of those on them, so they weren't always possible when we had the paper list sent into us. Oh goodness, isn't that funny? Um, I forgot to put my do not disturb. I apologize. I just had a call coming through on my computer. Can everyone still hear me okay? Okay, good, excellent. Gotta love technology. I forgot phones could ring in here. Uh, so we were getting these paper lists coming in, and admin staff trying to keep up with them, trying to read the writing, trying to figure out the nicknames and get entry done. So it was quite painful. And while we're fairly comfortable with our attendance tracking, it was not 100% accurate either. And so with our current model, what we have done, we had an interesting thing happen at the same time as we were getting ready to review the MoveSafe program and figure out how to update it. The It's Your Move program was rolling off of its grant funding, and we had to figure out how to embed it. And when the grant funding ended, there was a dedicated team of about 10 staff that looked after the It's Your Move team when it was grant funded. When the grant funding ended, that entire program came onto our same little team of 4. So not only did we have the manual materials handling program, we now had the patient handling program on our portfolio. So we really had to do some creative thinking as far as how to manage that volume of work with our little group of expertise. And there is ongoing discussions, by the way, of how our resourcing is distributed. Some of you on the call may have recently received an email from me going, hey, if you know a lot about patient handling programs, would you be willing to be surveyed? Because we're still trying to figure out sustainability on it. But where that all took us with looking at both programs now together and figuring out what to do, we came up with e-learning delivery of 2 modules. And what we learned between the It's Your Move program and MoveSafe program was that the MSI prevention component, so that little bit of anatomy that I was kind of joking about, but the importance of neutral postures and avoiding twisting and those fundamental concepts, they were common to both programs. So what we did was we actually created the same foundation MSI prevention e-learning module, and it is a prerequisite now for both the MoveSafe and the It's Your Move program. So we kind of one and done with that as our foundation, and that is a big component to achieving our legislated compliance under Part 14 of the Alberta Occ Health and Safety Code. A lot of what the legislation says we need to accomplish, we achieve just in that prerequisite module. And then they do every year. So that's every 3 years, staff require that. Then annually is the MoveSafe module, which gets into more of the details of, okay, for manual materials handling, these are the things that you need to know. This is then reinforced for those of you that were starting to worry that we had put all of it online. This is reinforced through in-person practical training with a champion that addresses core techniques and can be done as on-the-job training. So if they want to book a classroom and do a whole session with a big group, they can do that, but we've left it flexible that it could even be someone that's trained as a trainer or a champion can deliver this type of training as they're orienting someone on the job. So we've left some flexibility in there, which the first rendition of our program didn't have as much flexibility as we would like. what we've had to do as well, because of our small team size, is change from just train the trainer to uh, a three-level system. So our team trains master trainers. So these might be supervisors, working leads, that kind of thing, that are empowered to by their leadership to deliver training sessions to train champions. So we have a fleet of master trainers out in the organization that they train champions, and then the champions teach frontline workers. The upside to having the e-learning content is that it avoids that sort of telephone whispers issue. We did have that in the original model where it was all in-person delivery, where by the time I trained someone and then they trained someone, the message had altered. By having e-learning be very solid and consistent format for the key messages, then what's left for the champions to do is what they do best, and that is do the job safely, demonstrate it safely, and reinforce that front line without having to worry about all the theory component. So it's working well for us at this point. We're happy with the outcomes, but there's always more to learn and figure out. So e-learning, I mentioned earlier that we don't have great computer access for some of our folks. So that was one of the things that came back. We have one department in particular. It's our nutrition, food services, linens, and environmental services. They are under one leadership umbrella. They have very limited computer access for staff, like even as far as having little like drop-in computer spots and so on. They don't have great access. So what that group has done is they provide the e-learning modules, so both the MSI Prevention and MoveSafe, in a telehealth format. So they arrange telehealth rooms across the organization and hold these sessions. It does mean that they are getting paper attendance lists, but what they committed to was they have what's called a session coordinator to track all of the attendance and enter it into our computer education tracking system. So it's taken the work off of us, and that department is owning it and taking responsibility for it. And that's been beautiful, and we are so thankful for our partnership with them. And then the in-person practical sessions that are taught frontline, we tried to figure out, well, how are we going to document these? So we have champions teach frontline, even as on-the-job training. How do we capture that training occurred? So through our e-learning platform, we call it My Learning Link in AHS, they have to just log in under their name, like any worker that's completed the training. They just have to log in, and it's about a 2-minute process where they do a click, and they complete, say that they have completed their in-person practical. Where we're still working on it is driving the completion of this. So what we're seeing in our training numbers is, yeah, we've got master trainers, and then we've got trainers, and then we don't always see the practical attestation being completed at the same rate, even though we know that training is happening out there. So we're still working on the messaging on that. Using your library. As far as computer access goes, Erin, I just saw your question there. We try. We've got so many remote sites that even our clinical staff in the early days of this seem to be struggling with computer access. So we explore all different options, but we are really trying to get the departments to own that and find that responsibility and capacity to get the training access for their staff. The group that's done the telehealth workaround are the ones that are most computer limited as far as access or sometimes literacy goes. And so that department has taken ownership to build that accountability. The other departments, they are able to manage computer access, and we're seeing more and more computers being brought onto our sites for that, because there's other annual mandatory education requirements, such as our codes and so on, that also have to be met and are done online. So we're seeing an organizational push to get that computer access. So compared to where we started with 5,000 trained, pretty happy that we've had these modules up and going since, as you can see, different dates in 2016 and early 17. In that time, as of April 1st, we've had over 16,000 staff complete the MSI prevention module. Keep in mind that is the foundation for both patient handling and materials handling, of course. And then the MoveSafe specific e-learning, here in 1 year, we've reached 7,500 staff, whereas the original model in 4 years, we had got 5,000. So we're quite satisfied with that. We've got master trainers, we've got champion trainers. So it's coming along quite nicely. And I did throw in our It's Your Move patient handling numbers in there as well. So you can see that course hasn't been available as long as far as the master level comes, but it's clicking along quite nicely. It's great being able to pull these numbers as well because of the e-learning. We're able to run reports much more cleanly. We've also developed some additional resources. So from the original model of the program, we kind of, okay, let's get the training out, and we maybe had a couple little best practice one-pagers. So we've added more best practice one-pagers. And then another thing that we're quite delighted with is that we put together some educational videos. And the production value varies a little bit on them, but they're not bad. They get the message out there. So we're finding the videos are being used as just sort of tune-ups of training, sometimes to add variation. If a team or a department are having an issue with one particular aspect, they can even show the video during a team meeting and discuss it. Someone coming back, returning to work following an injury, they might be directed to review the videos just to refresh knowledge and best practices and so on. So for the link, I'm just checking where we're at. I'm going to try and show you one on my screen, so bear with me. I wrote down instructions as to how to do this. So give me 1 second. You're going to see a change on your screen. I'm going to pull up one of our videos and share my screen. Hopefully this is working. All right. So we do have our educational videos actually up on YouTube. So any of you can also view these if that is of interest for you. We've got the way you would find it if you don't want to sort of copy that URL, or you can email me if you want the internet address directly. But all you need to do is in Google, you search AHS YouTube, and then you go select that, and you select playlists, workplace health and safety, and then all of our videos show up. There's patient handling, materials handling, and One Computer Ergo One here. And I'll just quickly show you. So that's me, by the way. So I'm an actress as well. Who knew? Uh, so we've tried to cover off a few different topics that come up. So water bottles is one of those funny, awkward ones. Handling laundry is another one. So the video is narrated, and the narrator is talking about how it can be helpful to break up the load between two bags and to have them filmed in our site has really helped with the uptake of it and the buy-in for it. Now, I'm trying to see if I can get back to my slide deck. Uh-oh, where am I going? There we go back to my slide deck. Beautiful. Hopefully that got back to the slide deck. Hopefully. All righty, awesome. All right. So, and then always in context, so this is where our program's got to. This is where we're at right now. So we're still trying to drive those numbers up for completion of the overall program, tweaking some of those issues with computer access, with working with the departments on their workaround options. We do have slightly different delivery options in each of our 5 zones as far as how it's done. So this is the overall concept. There's a little bit of tweaking that happens in the individual zone levels. And our organization is maturing as well. The early days really were chaotic and quite stressful. And in the last year, under our CEO, Verna Yu, there's really been a change, a coming together of trying to bring all of AHS onto the same page after, each program really had to find its feet and so on. So last year, AHS refreshed its vision to healthy Albertans, healthy communities together. And they launched 4 strategic initiatives as an organization to guide us in the coming years. And so there's one around sort of information management, information technology, that kind of thing. There's another one around clinical health research and innovation. There's a patient first strategy. And then what those of us in health and safety get very excited about is our people strategy. And it's looking at how do we support our people to have a healthy and safe work environment that's inclusive and resilient. And so I think it's a good sign for us that our program's on track, because as we went, as our CEO took us down this path to review where are we at, where are we trying to go as an organization, our program fits with these new things that have come on board. Our people strategy, we just tuck into it. So I think we've been on track and maybe even ahead of our time a little bit with the program, which is exciting. And so under values, we go by living our values together, and AHS CARES. So CARES is the acronym for our 5 main values of compassion, accountability, respect, excellence, and safety. And the S for safety was something that was part of a very passionate discussion by many in this organization to make sure that it stayed as one of our core values as an organization. So happy that that was recognized and incorporated. So there are many factors when creating a program, from the black and white legislation, not necessarily the most glamorous part, but it's the best starting point. Stakeholder diversity, capacity, and need is everything. If any of those is missing, if we don't recognize the diversity of our workforce, if we don't recognize the capacity of departments to take on these programs or what needs they have. If we had started this program just saying, okay, this is how you lift and lower a box, it would have had so many shortcomings, because so very few manual material handling tasks in our organization actually involve lifting and lowering a box. There's so much more complexity to it than that. And then organizational size and structure, we're a beast. Most of you will be, in settings with smaller groups of workers and stakeholders. But I think the path is similar. Just some of the challenges might vary a little bit. Being methodical, that's my nature anyway, but it is very helpful. So if any questions ever come up about the program, you can know how it got to that point and where that driver was coming from. And then always being willing to review and modify the program over time. Like I said, it was just last year our values and everything were refreshed, so we had to take another look at the program and make sure it was fitting within where our overall organization was going. Alrighty, and so I talked very quickly, I suspect, through that, but I am happy to take any questions. Cool. All right, for a great presentation. Your experience, lit review, did you come across any success or evidence to support body awareness training? Fitness trainer. Our general approach is not that practice makes perfect, but practice makes permanent. That's kind of one of the philosophies behind getting that in-person reinforcement. I don't recall specific literature review around sort of that body awareness feedback component. And again, we're relying, once we get to the front line, we're relying on very frontline workers, not necessarily those that are comfortable with human kinetics and kinesiology kind of language. So we try to make it very functional in language for them as far as how to accomplish things. Master trainers, how are they selected? Do they require any specific certification? So the master trainers, we don't select them. They volunteer or are volunteered to us to complete the training. We do outline requirements of what we're looking for in our master trainers. So some of it is just job details, that they need to be in a job where they have the flexibility and support to be able to offer champion training sessions. If they're never going to be allowed to stray away from their core duties in their job, then that won't fit. And oh my goodness, the questions are scrolling in nice and fast here. So we ask for that, and then we ask for the confidence of being able to present and be in front of their peers. So far, that seems to be working fairly well, but we don't have a core competency. We provide them training, and we also let them know that they don't need to know everything. They need to know the program, they need to know that content for delivery, and then if additional questions come up, that there's our little sort of team of experts behind the scenes that they can always be contacted for support. Any injury stats pre-post program implementation? We're just getting to that now. We've been waiting with everything else changing in the organization and maturing. We also had to wait for our injury stats to mature. I know that some departments and areas have done some targeted reviews of their injury stats and are seeing some positive outcomes. The training program alone does not do it. We know through change management and all of that we do need the sponsorship and support. Where we hope to be going in the coming year is, now that we can run the stats, is look at our strong performing areas and really recognize and celebrate them, and also study them to understand why they are getting such good results, because we're not arrogant enough to think it's all from the training program. It has to be so many pieces that fit together. We also are going to be looking at and kind of going after our high offenders. So if the stats are going the wrong way or they're sitting really high, we'll be able to do a more targeted intervention and hopefully get to that pre and post analysis more. Training duration, I think I did sort of skim over that and didn't really say it. So good question. The master training is a full day training session. When the trainers train champions, it's a half day session. And then for frontline, I think we're at about 1 hour of in-person practical. The e-learning modules, the MSI prevention one is about a half hour, and the Move Safe e-learning is about 40 minutes, if I do recall. Alrighty. Wow, so many great questions. I love it, guys. All right. Indicators to measure performance, program performance regarding accident prevention. So yeah, Jacques, like I said, we're just getting into the stats of being able to measure impact of the program and what other variables are impacting the uptake and success or lack of success of the program in different areas. And let's see. For maximum group sizes, good question. We max at 15, I do believe, for the in-person, because when you get into physical practical, really anything over 10 is getting hard to watch. But if they can manage to get 15 people into a room, then we don't want to slow them down from that either. All right, and leading indicators that we're tracking other than training numbers. Other aspects to training in our program that you would highlight. What I am proud of with our program, and it was kind of the joke right up front, was that we wanted to build a standardized, consistent, yet flexible and adaptive program. And those things at some points just seem completely contraindicated to each other. Yet I feel like we've accomplished that. There's always going to be more work to be done, but to have our e-learning components really hit the legislated requirements and provide a consistent messaging and a consistent visual with photos that are taken from our work sites of our workers, I think is very, very powerful. But then to give the leeway for our champions and our departments and our sites to model the program in a way that makes sense for them is great. So as for delivery options, for example, Edmonton zone is very much by department and site, that we just have like schwacks of trainers all over the place delivering this program. In Central Zone, the leadership for all of the Central Zone decided to try a different approach, and they recruited 6 of their existing staff, cleared some of their schedule to be dedicated trainers, and so they provide the training out there to champions across disciplines, across departments, and so on. So it's great to see, you know, that we've given them room to own it. Let's see, entirely different topic. Let's see, program, integrate improvement opportunities, for instance. I'm not entirely following this question. I apologize.
All right.
Holland, do you want to email me directly? Quality control
of the trainers.
Yes, we do try to work with our workplace health and safety advisors to have them attend sessions and reinforce messages, give them any additional support or education they might need to get that consistency.
Okay, everyone, we are at our 2 o'clock time, and it looks like our questions have slowed down. And again, if you have any further ones, please contact Deborah directly. I just put a little note in. Again, thank you, Deborah, for an excellent session. I'm glad it worked technically for us. And I just put a note in there. I offered to coordinate webinars this year for ACE. So if you have any other suggestions or you would like to be a presenter, please contact me. And we have some topics lined up for the fall, but we're still looking for someone for June, and that would be greatly appreciated. So thank you again for everyone who joined. And again, Deborah, that was great. Look forward to meeting you in Banff. Everyone have a great day. Bye-bye. This is recorded as well. It will be posted on the website, in the ACE website, in the next few weeks.